Hello, women's hockey fans. This is another installment of the special series, The Original 8, as part of the Founding Four podcast. The Founding Four podcast is an independent women's hockey podcast hosted by me, Erica L. Ayala. This week, in the final installment, part 8 of 8, we have the captain from the Metropolitan Riveters, Madison Packer. We recorded this the day her re-signing was announced. She is back for season 6. She was the first of the original 8 to re-sign. We have since had Shannon Doyle and Elena Orlando, as well as Kaylee Fratkin, announce their re-signing to their respective teams. But Packer was the first, so we talk about that. We talk about her and Anya expecting a little baby boy Packer, and about some of the growth and development that Madison Packer, has experienced through her NWHL hockey career in particular. Of course, I ask about the wedding dance video, so you'll have to wait till the end of the episode for that. This has been a great series. I've really enjoyed doing the original 8 and kind of having a serial approach to getting into the founding members of the league and learning their perspectives. So thank you to Kira Dostal-Arena, Corrine Bowie, Shannon Doyle, Elena Orlando, Jillian Dempsey, Jordan Brickner, Kaylee Fratkin, and Madison Packer. This is the interview again with captain for the Metropolitan Riveters, Madison Packer. And just so happens that you re-signed today, so I guess we'll start there. Officially the NWHL season is not done. We still have, hopefully, the Isabel Cup final, but we've seen a few names here and there re-sign. Was there ever a doubt that you were coming back for season 6?
I don't think really a doubt. There was, I had a little bit of concern about some lingering injuries towards the end of the season. But I don't think it would have impacted, my decision to come back. It just maybe would have impacted the timeline, but everything looked good. So, um, yeah, I think that, a couple of years ago when I made the decision to stop and then I had hip surgery and I felt good, that kind of gave me a second life. And I had a lot of fun last year. I had more fun playing hockey last year than I've had in a long time. So my hope is that a lot of those people come back and we have a similar team. And as long as it's fun and I stay relevant, I'll keep playing.
As long as Madison Packer stays relevant. I don't know, I think we could have you playing for a while in the end of, if that's the case. Yeah, but so I've been asking all of the original 8, the 5-timers, as I like to say, a series of similar questions. So we'll walk through those. First thing is, just when you hear that there's 8 players that have been with the league since the beginning, and you being one of those players, not only that's been there since the beginning, but has also been with the same franchise, what are some of the first things that pop into your head?
I think it's special. I mean, I don't. There's not many other opportunities aside from once you get to the professional level, I guess, where you get to do that. You've seen a couple people that, like you said, have bounced around. So to be able to play for the same team over a long period of time has been something that's pretty special. Just about everything with the Riveters has changed since I first got there. Um, but it's been fun to see the changes that are made and the growth, whether it's coaching or management or the league. Um, just see the different changes that have occurred over time and also witness some of the things that have stayed the same.
Yeah, for sure. And you've been with the Riveters, and you had a lot of consistency as far as head coaching for the first 3 seasons,
Hmm.
but there was definitely a lot of roster overhaul in that period of time. You also had some changes at the GM level in that time. For you, when you think of the first 3 years, I suppose leading up to the 2018 Isabel Cup, I mean, what are some of the challenges that you feel the franchise faced in that period of time, and how were you as one of the leaders able to help the team kind of find their north in the middle of all of that?
I think the biggest and probably the most obvious one is uh, getting players, right? I mean, it's one of the more expensive markets as far as being right outside Manhattan. It's not a cheap place to live. So getting people to, trying to find people that were already there or getting people to move there without much, guarantee on if they'd be able to have a second source of income or if, their income from the league was going to be enough to cover their expenses in the time that they were going to be there. So I think that first and foremost, it was always tough to figure out how to build a strong team based on the players that we were able to recruit. Um, and yeah, I think that was honestly really it in the first couple of years was just player personnel,
Yeah,
and we overcame
again,
that. But
yeah, and I think you had that consistency in coaching that some would argue made that a little bit easier than some other franchises. I mean, I
hmm
spoke to Bray. We released that interview, and and Connecticut certainly has not had much consistency. Certainly in those first 3 seasons. But also thinking about now all 5 years. I mean, you mentioned that this past season was some of the most fun that you've had playing hockey. But when you think of all 5 years, I mean, what are some of the moments, whether it's a particular game or a particular road trip that stand out to you?
um, I think one of the biggest maybe was that last year the shootout goal that I scored on Shannon Zabados.
The house pretty epic.
That's kind of a selfish one, but that was for me individually. I mean, she's one of the best goalies in the world, and so to score a goal like that in a game where our team kind of needed a pick me up um, was something that I'll definitely remember. Um, Winning the Isabel Cup obviously is a big one, and I got to do that with Courtney and Jenny and Russo, who are some, I don't play with them any longer, but they're still three of my best friends in the world. So um, that's up there. And just, I guess overall, excuse me, I can look back. I don't think I've played with a single person who I didn't enjoy my time with. For whatever reason, we always seem to attract, good players, but also good people to the organization. And so I've, got to meet a lot of people that I wouldn't have otherwise crossed paths with and made a lot of good friends and just had a lot of good memories and moments with a lot of people that I'm grateful to have gotten to spend time with.
Absolutely. I mean, you have seen that roster, as we talked about, just really grow and evolve in a lot of different ways. I do want to go back to maybe not just specifically that goal, although it was a very, very nice goal, but just kind of that season. You talked about coming back from injury. You and I had a pretty um, long conversation when you had retired. Obviously, you've come out of retirement, but um, at least at that point in time, your return to hockey and return to the Riveters obviously was not guaranteed, and you had to come back from that hip surgery. You know, from a mental perspective, what were some of the more difficult things in coming back from that injury, and who were some of the people that helped you overcome so that you could have that type of a moment?
Yeah, I think there were so many things going on for me at that time away from hockey. And I chose to retire because I knew I had to have hip surgery and I was kind of ready to move on just in life. But then I had surgery, I felt better, and a lot of things away from the rink changed my circumstance. Um, and so coming back, I didn't really have, I mean, I chose to come back to the Riveters and I took a coaching job, and really my whole life then became hockey for um, the first time in a while. Previously, I was working a different job and was only able to focus so much energy and attention on the hockey aspect of things. And so everything kind of came together all at once, and I needed that because it was. Um, I had a really good team. Dr. Lomas did a great job. I had a good physical therapy team, and my teammates were really supportive. And as far as leaning on people, I think Anya was a huge backbone for me and really pushed me. My parents, when I first had surgery, I went and lived with them, and they did a lot to get me up every morning and get me doing the exercises I needed to do. So, but really, when it came down to it, with my teammates, being willing to do extra drills with me and skate with me after practice because I couldn't always do the stuff they were doing to get back going. And it's hard when you're trying to rehab by yourself. So all those people along the way who pick you up and carry you, and you can't necessarily walk yourself. They're the reason that I was able to get back as quickly as I did, and I am especially grateful to them for that.
I know that Rivs fans are very excited that you made your way back, and certainly are celebrating today as you had a very, very adorable video announcing your return. You did, though, put out a little challenge to yourself there, and maybe put Dempsey on notice. So, Jillian Dempsey, of course, one of the OGs as well. We had her on the original 8 series, but sounds like you're coming for her goals title there.
Yeah, that was just being funny, but I don't know. Dempsey will have to have a line change or play on one leg for me to catch her, maybe, but just have a little fun with it.
Oh, always good times. And, but that leads me to another conversation we like to have with the original 8. You've been able to play with a good number of the players that have played all 5 seasons, obviously, Kira Dostal, Arena, and you played with Elena Orlando in that first season as well. You've played with Kaylee Fratkin. But when you think of Dempsey, when you think of Doyle, Brickner, and then Corrine Bowie, what are some of the things that you notice about their game, and maybe some of the things that as an opponent you're not so eager to face when you hit the ice against them?
Yeah, well, I've played with Bowie a couple times in All-Star games, and then I played with Jordan in college. Obviously, I played with
Right.
Dempsey. We were at a couple USA camps together, and then we actually played U18 together. I think for one year.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, Dempsey is just when you think of I guess what like the mentality of just like all in, and you cut her arm off and hockey puck's probably still out. Like she just works hard every time she's on the ice, and she's tough to play against. She doesn't really engage in the the banter and the chippiness, and so there's not really a way to kind of throw her off her game. She just shows up and does her job and puts her head down. Um, she can score goals, so she's obviously super dangerous in that regard. And Jordan and Doyle both are work hard defensemen on the blue line. They both have the ability to score and make plays, but they're just two solid D that have really anchored the Connecticut Whale for quite a few years, obviously since the beginning. And Bowie, same thing up in Buffalo. She can score goals. She's big. She's dangerous. All four of those players might go down as some of the best players to play, especially in the first couple of years of the league. So a lot of respect for them.
Yeah, absolutely. All pioneers in your own respect. And again, you are the first of the 8, at least to be announced as returning for season 6. But one of the things I've been asking everyone is when you think of the next 5 years. So we've got one inked for you already, but when you think of the next 5 years of the NWHL, what are some of the hopes that you have for the Riveters franchise, which has been your home for the last 5 seasons, and for the league overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first two that come to mind for the league overall is you hope that the league can grow and add teams over time, and also add to grow and expand the salary cap over time. Those are two big steps, right? And underneath them, there's a lot of little things. Hopefully, they procure more sponsors and get more eyes on the game. Get a bigger ability to broadcast, whether it's on Twitch on a or they are able to get some kind of network to step in and just really boost us out. I mean, that's where the money is getting sponsorships and partners. And then you need dollars to enact change for things to grow. So that would be my big hope for the league overall. And the Rivs, I think, more of what we did last year. 2 seasons ago, um, there was a lot that went wrong for a lot of reasons, and we had a lot of rebuilding to do. Last year, after the first practice, I thought that our fate was very different than how the league, or I'm sorry, the season panned out. So I think just more of the same of what we did last year. We definitely weren't satisfied with where we finished in the standings, and I think it took us a little longer than we would have hoped, but quicker than expected to come alive. Um, so I think just keep building under Evo. He's a great coach. Kate's a great general manager, and if those two could stick around for another 5 years, I think that the franchise would be in good hands. So maybe not any change there, but just continue building and player personnel and things like that.
Yeah, and another part of that question that I like to ask everyone is, where do you see yourself in that 5-year picture, whether it's with the Riveters or the league overall?
um, I think a big part of that is where I see myself in life. I guess with my family. In 5 years, I'll have a 4-year-old. So, we'll see. I mean, I think that, my wife has been incredibly supportive. Obviously, she has her own role with the league. But she's been supportive of me continuing to play and live out my dream and my career. Um, and I think that as long as I'm healthy, I'll continue to play. 5 years from now, I'm 33. I like to think that I could still keep up. Um, but who knows? A lot changes. If I'm not playing, I wouldn't rule out, me having some other role, whether it's with the league or with Riveters in a coaching capacity. I guess I'm hopeful for, but that's only if they want me.
Well, I don't know, Packer. There might be a revolt if you wanted to come back and someone didn't take you. So just keep Rivs fans on notice for that one. But jokes aside, I mean, you mentioned that you and Anya are expecting. Obviously, this will be your first child together. I mean, wow, that's a pretty big life moment. I mean, how are you and Anya taking in all the news?
We're excited. I mean, obviously it was intentional.
Yes.
So we're excited. It's crazy everything that's going on right now.
Yeah.
Puts things into perspective pretty quickly. So I think we're excited to grow our family, and we've gotten to experience a lot of pretty cool, unique moments together. And so anytime you can add another, member to the mix, it's exciting and makes it a little more memorable. But I think right now we're just kind of caught in the excitement mode, um, and it'll all become very real very quickly. But we'll see. Hopefully, we've got a little hockey player on our hands.
Yeah. I was joking with Anya about this just, in a casual conversation.
Mhm.
But I mean, how committed are you to having, your baby boy definitely be a hockey player, or would you settle for an athlete overall? What would your thoughts be if the athletic genes don't pass on? Like, have you thought about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think that anyone says that anyone who says that they don't care is maybe lying to themselves a little bit. Obviously, we're hopeful that he wants to play hockey. If he doesn't, we'll get over it. If he doesn't want to play sports, we'll get over it. I think we just want him to be happy and healthy first. But it's tough, I think, not to. I mean, I had an older brother that played hockey, and uh, that's why I wanted to play hockey. So I feel like when it's kind of in the blood and you grow up around it, it just becomes something that you want to do naturally. Um, and so there's that hope. But if it doesn't happen, we'll be okay.
Yeah, for sure. I also joked with Anya. There'll be plenty of extended family and hockey aunts around. So,
Yeah.
something's got to stick. I'm sure.
Yeah, if he doesn't wanna play, we'll throw him in net and he can be my goalie.
There you go. There you go. No, either way, everyone has to go through their growing pains and
Yeah.
suffer along. Everyone's got those things. But you mentioned that hockey obviously being a big part of your life, even growing up. Obviously now as a hockey family, you've got the PA director and captain of the Riveters, but there are also other elements to you. There's two things, Packer, that from season one like really stood out to me about you. Um, One was that you have a love for guacamole. I don't know if you remember this conversation. My sister and I were waiting to meet the Riveters after a game in the the autograph line,
Mhm.
and she must have said something about like she like spilled guac or something on her shirt, and you just like lit up. You were like, "Whoa, where's the guac?" Like, and I was like,
Who brought
told this
guac?
whole story. Yeah, who brought guac and told this whole story. I guess you used to live over like a Mexican restaurant or something.
Yeah,
Do you remember that?
Qdoba. I used to live on top of Qdoba.
You still in heavy into the guac these days?
Oh, yeah, I might I think I'm having guac tonight, no joke.
Amazing. Yeah, got some ripe avocados here. Might have to whip some up myself. But the other thing is that in that first season, the league put out these pretty cool cards, and you were one of the players for the Riveters, and they'd have like these fun facts, and one of them was that you journal every day. Do you still journal every day?
I do not still journal every day. I am getting back into it with my gig, writing, uh, for the Hockey Wilderness, but, I don't do it as much as I'd like to, and I definitely miss it. I notice a difference when I do write and when I don't. I used to be good about it, and I'm getting back to being better about it.
Yeah, I see that you've joined the media corps. Very cool. So got to make sure you check out your work there. But yeah, I think writing is definitely something one that maybe we got to look out for this little Packer, see if that resonates. It's either writing or speaking. I think that I just found that interesting because there's so many different ways to kind of process what we go through, the good, the bad, and different, and writing has always been one of those ways for me, and it sounds like that's kind of something that's been important to you as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I first got into it in high school, kind of. I think you and I have had this conversation maybe
Yeah.
offline before, but I got into it just kind of as a therapeutic thing when a friend of mine passed away, and I realized I really enjoyed it, and I could it could be used for other things than just writing in a journal that goes under my bed every night. So I made was a creative writing major in college, and it's particularly helpful. Like, I'm not always great at verbalizing how I'm feeling or what's going on, so the writing thing has been good for me, and I thoroughly enjoy it. So
Yeah, that's really cool. And yeah, we have had that conversation before, of course, especially given that you have really made a point to honor one of your friends who recently passed, Kyle Pavone, and that's been something that for now the last two seasons, if I recall, that you have integrated into your presence as far as a professional hockey player with the NWHL. And I think we had spoken before about why that was important for you to do, not just because Kyle is a family friend of yours, but also it sounded like you felt that there was room for more awareness. Maybe if you could talk a little bit more about that and how where things stand and how you're hoping to continue to be involved.
yeah, I mean, I think it's hard because there are so many people that need help, right? And there's so many issues that hit close to home for people, and no one is more important than another. But mental health has always been a big one for Anya and myself as well. I'm not, I guess, as vocal always about it. But then when Kyle Pavone passed away, it um, just kind of became a good opportunity, I think, when his family started the foundation to get it out there and get it into an environment where you don't otherwise typically hear about it. And now it's becoming more, I think, more common in professional sports. the NFL, the NHL had players this year who were open about seeking treatment for substance abuse. And it doesn't have to be hardcore drugs that we're talking about. I mean, there's people struggle with mental health and with substance abuse of all sorts all the time. But they're not always comfortable talking about it. And I think that the more that it comes up and the more you normalize it, um, normalize the conversation, the more comfortable people become. And this year, my every one of my teammates at one point, some of them all season, some sporadically, um, you know, bought a hat and wore it on the goal line with me at home games. Um, that's something that I don't think would have happened a couple years ago because people, I've found at least in the younger teammates that they're more comfortable talking about um, things that are going on from a mental health standpoint with themselves, but also not necessarily more compassionate, but are just more eager to try and get the word out there and talk about it and support it, or have experienced something similar themselves. And I don't, I'm not that much older than all my teammates, but there's a 4 or 5 year gap there with some of them. And I found this year, especially, I found myself having conversation that similar to what you and I had at the All-Star game a couple years ago with my teammates on a regular basis, because they're comfortable talking about it. They know people who have been affected who are their age. um, and it's unfortunate that people are experiencing this, but I think that the more we get people out talking about it, hopefully the less we have to have the conversation. So
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I also think what I found illuminating this time around is that you do see a little bit of a generational difference in how topics, these quote unquote heavy topics are discussed, which I think I find really interesting as we think of hockey culture in general. I
mhm.
think it can be a lot of topics or issues, insert topic or issue, but that there has been this kind of accepted almost culture where hockey is kind of, you put your skates on, you hit the ice, you're a good teammate, and then you kind of just go about your day. It seems as though you feel that the hockey community, or maybe just the sports community in general, is kind of opening that up. What are some of the things that though can be challenging, as we are seeing this mix of generations, and some are gung-ho and for it, and others are still trying to find their footing.
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. I think one, you know sports are becoming more available across the board in college. And I had a phenomenal experience at Wisconsin where whether it was the women's hockey team, men's hockey team, football, whatever, like sports were a community. And in life and everything, when you're in a community, you experience different challenges and you learn to either, accept and be okay with somebody or something and understand it, or not. And more times than not, people within the sports community are willing to reach out and love each other and support each other. So you just learn, you kind of wrap your head around things quicker, whether you're a sports writer or you're actually on, you're involved in the sports team, whatever it might be. And I think that those things trickle down. So we're seeing more, I would say, acceptance and just comfort to talk about uncomfortable things across the board. I mean, I was amazed at the number of conversations that I had this year with teammates about different things, um, in a good way. And I think that part of it is just, the younger generations have grown up seeing different things in media, on TV. They have access to those things quicker than maybe you or I would, 10 years ago. So they're just catching on to things more quickly, and they're just younger generations are deciding, well, we don't really care about that, and that's okay, and we're going to talk about it, or like this is like just different things are a big deal to them, I guess. If I'm making sense.
Yeah.
But they're, um, I think, making a shift socially that is good for our world.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think I see it in some of the sports that I cover, whether it's obviously talking more explicitly about race and racism, or even I've learned a lot of things. I'm eternally grateful for Harrison Brown, as an example, of someone who taught me that there are places that I can be better at being understanding and accepting, and making sure that whether it's intentional or not, that I'm not causing harm in a community that I care about and that I want to consider family. So yeah, I think it's interesting to see. I think you're onto something there also with just the accessibility aspect of that as well. Gonna shift gears a little bit here. Kind of related, but more on a lighter note. I think that as someone who has followed the Riveters pretty closely, not as much this last season, hurt my heart, but I think I've also seen growth in you, and we talked a little bit about some of that being, just being a little bit more comfortable after having that surgery. But I don't know. I just wanted to kind of recognize that, honor that, and ask the most pressing question of like how much of that is you leveling up after getting married.
Maybe a little.
No, but
taught and told to be nicer.
yeah. I'm teasing you a little bit on that. I have to get Anya's thoughts on that. But no, I do want to go back just to, I mean, you it seems like you're having a lot of fun in the process, and I just want to honor that and thank you for being someone that I've always enjoyed learning from. Everything from like the best of quotes. I mean, you've given me gold over the years. You keep it real. I respect and appreciate that. To, also opening up. It's been a lot of fun to get to know you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And I do, jokes aside, I think that a credit goes to Anya for maybe taking a bullet. But I think that it humanized me to people a little bit more. And not that I was ever like on this untouchable pedestal, but just that I was more than, the person that went out and picked fights on the ice, scored a goal here and there, and went home, right? There's a lot that goes on in between there. And so I think that just my interactions with her on social media, I got more comfortable kind of not being alone in the spotlight, but having someone to share it with. And so it made it more comfortable and easier for me to do those things with her support.
Love to see it. Happy for you. But Brickner gave me a little bit. She said, "Oh no, Packer, she's a good one. When she's down for you, then you're in for life." So I always respect folks that are loyal, and I hear good things, Packer. I've seen it myself, so want to give you some stick taps.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean that'll do it for our original 8 series. Again, thank you for taking some time out. I'm glad to hear that you and the family are well, and now that you're more comfortable with the social meets, we expect some good hashtag content coming from the Packer family.
Yeah, I'm trying to step up my game. I can't keep up with Anya though.
I do want to, before I have one more thing I want to talk to you about.
Yeah.
So Anya on NWHL Open Ice, she got a little peer pressure to release that wedding dance video. She told a little story about that. How'd you feel about it? How are you feeling about that video being out there?
I'll get over it. I'm sure someone else was storing it away for a rainy day, so I'm glad she was the one to leak it.
There you go. I thought it was beautiful. You looked great. I'm glad that
what's most offensive is it took me 10 weeks to learn that dance. Anya had it in about 6 minutes, but we ended up paying for 10 weeks of dance lessons because I've got 2 left feet and 1 eye. I just couldn't figure it out.
Oh man. Well, I thought it came together beautifully, so job well done.
Thank you.
All right, Packer, I'm gonna let you go, but thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.
Once again, thank you, women's hockey fans, for listening to this final installment of the original 8 series as part of the Founding 4 podcast. As an independently run women's hockey podcast, we want to thank you for subscribing, for listening to our episodes. Special stick taps to those who are a member of the Patreon posse. That's how this thing keeps going season after season. So if you are a member of the Patreon posse, thank you. For those who are part of Patreon, you saw my live video where I talked about the draft coming up. I broke down my thoughts about NWHL Toronto expansion and a lot more goodies. I also got into some WNBA talk. Big week or big month for the WNBA with the virtual draft. I hear there's another sport, I don't know, something about football, that I was also doing a virtual draft. 3 days of an NFL virtual draft. They couldn't even do all 3 rounds of the WNBA draft. They just started scrolling names at the bottom in the later rounds. Ugh. Anyway, I talk about all that kind of stuff over at Patreon. Want to wrap this show by just saying thank you again to everyone who tunes in, for everyone who has reached out, for those again on Patreon. You know, it's been a little bit of an up and down for me, as I'm sure it is for many other people. But I'm here to encourage you, to say that you are appreciated, the work that you're doing, the struggles that you're going through. Hopefully this can be a space that we create in women's hockey where we can feel supported. I certainly have, and have all of you listeners to thank. Please stay healthy, stay happy, focus on your peace of mind, whatever that means to you. And hopefully we'll be at a women's hockey rink sometime in the near future.